Welcome to another video. This video I will discuss the history of Christmas. Christmas, of course, has a history going back about 2,000 years. And we see in the Gospels, there's two accounts, one in the Gospel of Matthew and the other in the Gospel of Luke. And of course, it's a bit unusual for people's births to be described in ancient literature. Usually we don't know much about them until they become adults and do something historical. And then it doesn't seem that the early Christians celebrated Christmas. We have an account from Egypt, from Clement of Alexandria, writing around 200 AD, and he says some people believe Jesus was born on this day, and others think he was born on this other day. He has four dates, and December 25th isn't one of them. And it doesn't seem that any of these were actually celebrated. They're just people speculating. So in short, there was no Christmas in 200, or at least Clement didn't know of any. So where did it come from? Well, in the early church, there was a great deal of disagreement about Easter. Easter was by far the most important holiday for the early Christians, and so different churches celebrated on different days, and there were churches, especially in the East, that celebrated Easter on March 25th, which was approximately the time of Passover, and they tried to convert Passover to their own local calendar, which was the Macedonian calendar, and March 25th also being the date of the spring equinox in ancient times. And now, after the Pope decided that it was his job to make all the Christians celebrate Easter on the same day, and he picked another day, not March 25th. So Christians had to stop celebrating Easter at that time, but people still wanted to celebrate on March 25th, and so they came up with other reasons to celebrate March 25th. The one that matters for our story is Annunciation. Annunciation, when Mary was told that she was pregnant. And then, of course, if Mary became pregnant on March 25th, then you do a little math, and then she gave birth to Jesus on December 25th, 9 months later. Now, so the first place that this is mentioned is a book by Sextus Julius Africanus in 221, he's writing a history of the world. And for him, the most important day in the history of the world was Annunciation, which he writes occurred on the first day of spring, which presumably means March 25th. And this, of course, would suggest a date of Christmas in December. And this writing is the first implication that we have of the date of Christmas. Now, the early Christians did not celebrate birthdays, so there was no celebration on December 25th, at least initially. And the first one that we know about was in 336 in Rome. Now, we don't know. And then at that time, the Christmas had to do with the Trinitarian controversy, and this was a way of emphasizing Christmas has a unique schedule where they have several masses on the same day, and thus the priest could inveigh against heretics several times on this one day. This controversy soon disappeared and was resolved, and after that, Christmas became a minor holiday, and that's the way it stayed until the time of Charlemagne. I should go back a bit. There was in the early Christian times, the main winter holiday was Epiphany on January 6th. You see, in the pagan Roman times, the most important holiday was January 1st, which was called Calends, or we would say New Year's Day. But this holiday was banned by the church, but people wanted to keep celebrating at this time anyway, so they Christianized the celebration by moving it to the nearest Christian holiday, which was Epiphany on January 6th. And so Epiphany was a big deal in the early Middle Ages. And then in 800, Charlemagne comes along, and he was crowned Emperor of the Franks on Christmas Day in the year 800, very important day in Christian history. And this caused Christmas to become a major holiday. And by the late Middle Ages, we hear about the 12 days of Christmas, and the chroniclers are writing about where famous people spent their Christmas. So clearly, Christmas was a very big deal in the late Middle Ages. Now, when the Reformation came along, the Puritans banned Christmas, and so it was banned during the time of Oliver Cromwell. And when Cromwell died, the king came back, and Christmas was legalized, and there seemed, but at least the respectable people didn't want to have anything to do with Christmas. It was lowbrow, but a significant number of people still celebrated, but it was considered the Catholic holiday, and your religion was suspect if you celebrated it. So after a few centuries, England decides to make its peace with Catholicism. In the early 19th century, this was called the Oxford Movement, and they reintroduced elements of Catholic worship into the English Church, and one of these, of course, being Christmas. And it was popularized by Charles Dickens, who wrote A Christmas Carol. But this time around, but at least Charles Dickens' version, the emphasis is all on generosity and being a good person and meeting your family. And so it's only very indirectly about Jesus. And in America, we had Washington Irving, who introduces Santa Claus, and he writes a story about Christmas where it was a British holiday. But of course, it wasn't really any more British than American. I mean, they of course had Christmas in Britain, but But basically, Washington Irving and Charles Dickens were creating a new holiday, a new version of Christmas that hadn't existed before. When Christmas became much more popular in America was at the time of the Civil War. Just before the war, there was a campaign to make Christmas a national holiday. And then during the war, there was a cartoonist named Thomas Nast, and he made many cartoons about Santa Claus, so Santa Claus became popular, and also about Union soldiers who, very sad cartoons that the Union soldiers were stuck on the front lines fighting the Confederacy when they could be home celebrating Christmas with their families. So people got all teary-eyed about Christmas. And then at the end of the war, Christmas was made a national holiday. And of course, perhaps the peak of Christmas celebration was the Christmas truce in 1914, where in the middle of the war, the British and Germans stopped fighting for one day and have a truce, but of course, in the next year, they just kept fighting through the war, through Christmas. There was no Christmas truce in 1915. Okay, well, I guess that's about all.